being a non-binary person that sometimes has the choice to either go into a men's restroom looking like this. You can look at me looking like this.
It's just interesting that I thought this was a trans debate. That's what I thought.
Non-binary people.
Non-binary people fall under the trans umbrella.
Yeah.
So I don't know, maybe you could educate yourself a little bit on that.
I think I could educate
maybe then you
you.
would figure
I think I
out,
could educate
you know,
you,
what
right?
reality is.
Oh, whoa.
Trans conservators vs trans liberal. Let's see.
It is a safety concern for trans women to share a female restroom.
It's not necessarily saying that trans women, it all comes down to self-ID. When we moved into a self-ID process, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of men just simply self-IDing into being trans women to utilize the female restroom and to harm women.
Or just be there. They're getting arousal from just being there.
You know, there was a photo or it was a video that went viral, I think like just 2 weeks ago, with some like whole man with a boner in the women's restroom. And there's just some poor woman filming it. Like, am I just supposed to like accept that this is here? So I think there's levels to it. I think that trans women who are actually trans, you know, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, you know, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas, you know, a cross-dresser who is emboldened to, in this current climate, say that they're trans because now anything is trans if you say so, that person should probably stay absolutely out of women's restrooms because you're there to get your rocks off and the women are there to take a poop and a pee. And you know, I really empathize with women who, you know, have an issue with it, and I can probably hear some women commenting, well, how do I know the difference between a fetishist and a real trans person? It's hard.
Well, officially, you can look at the pants. Secondly, if the person consistently looks at you, might be also a reason. I don't make eye contact with men. I don't do it ever in the bedroom unless it's high and I'm going to get out respectfully. That's it.
I want to comment on Blair's point. The one thing I kept hearing through all of the nuance is passability. Because ultimately, when we talk about passability, it determines how you get harassed in the bathroom. Because honestly, if you don't look so passable or whatnot, people are going to say, oh, that's a man with a dress on, and then there's going to be discourse. But the reality of it is, honestly, who cares who's trans and who's cis going in the bathroom? You should be minding your own business, being able to pee and do your business in peace, for the most part.
People are minding their business, but my business is also home. My child is perceiving to certain things that it's safe.
Conversation around this man with a boner on or whatever like that, I saw that picture and I thought to myself, that's really a right-wing talking point and conservative propaganda because that's their ideology.
How is it
when it comes to trans? I'm speaking. That's their ideology when it comes to trans. It's because conservatives have a basic level understanding of what transness is in the first place. And with all due respect, I do not think any of you are basic, but they use you as the baseline to amplifying this propaganda.
How is it propaganda if it's a thing that really happened, it was caught on video? Like it was an actual occurrence, it wasn't staged, it happened, and that's not the only, it's not an isolated incident.
But that's not enough for me to say because actors can do that. Who knows, they could have been an actor trying to make a point against trans people. No, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying you said that word. What I was getting out of what you were saying, the one word that was coming to me was passability. This is Blossom saying it. And so passability politics is really a thing in our trans community, especially when we come to the debate of restroom.
Well, you can say it's politics, but actually it's just real life, right? It's just about
I
where you're
agree.
able to assimilate to and where you're not. And I think one of the biggest problems in the trans community is the community by and large has seemed to reject assimilation and seems hell-bent on...
That's not true.
I think it's absolutely true, which is you see people talking about how you don't need to work on your transition at all to enter women's restrooms. And I think that that is so selfish.
That drives me crazy.
It's so disregarding of women who may or may not feel uncomfortable.
But the trans woman experience is not monolithic, so who are we to police transness? Why are we policing other people's transness and how they show up?
We have to protect women.
Why are y'all policing though? That's what I don't understand.
But you're using words that we're not using. It's not policing. We're listening to
policing.
women, and if you have 50%, we won't say 50%, but if you have a large chunk of the population of women saying that they are uncomfortable with a certain thing, a good person leans in and listens.
So why
they don't
are you
just
not listening
reject
to
it.
other trans women, Blair?
I
think
do
that's,
all day. I am right.
I think at least in Spain, where most people, there's a lot of trans people. I met a trans security guard. When they do their stuff, they don't promote in a specific way. They don't throw it in your face. They do their job and they just want to be treated respectfully. So if they go to a bathroom, they will try to do their best to make kids feel safe. They will never tell you this is normal. And if you are a little afraid because of certain people that might take advantage of being trans, they would take that in consideration. I don't think we're asking a lot, and most people surrounded by family usually take that in consideration. And Spain is very family oriented. It's hard for her, I get it, but hey, nobody is policing you. They're just policing around their kid. And if I have to be honest, ladies feel that too, because they're like, I'm afraid of a man, generally speaking, when I assume something might happen, when I'm pulling down my panties.
Here's what I would say then, because I do understand both sides. I didn't, I'm almost a decade into my transition, which means I was one time a year in, 6 months in, 2 months in. So I understand that, but I also knew at the very beginning of my transition that if I'm not at a place physically where I'm not making people feel uncomfortable, or I'm making people uncomfortable, then
Right.
that's on me. That's
Correct.
my responsibility to make sure that I'm going places a certain way to make sure that they're comfortable.
Because it's for
It
your
was my
safety also, too, right?
Well,
Would you also say
can-
that you're safe?
Well,
your
I know
safety
that
plays a part.
you seem to be looking at through the lens of always trans being the priority. I'm looking at through the lens of women being the priority here. There's
But
plenty of situations.
Why? I just want to know.
Yeah.
I'm saying work on your transition, take it as your responsibility, and be respectful. And that's the middle ground, right?
This is a self-preservation issue, right? So if somebody's in the bathroom and they have a boner, that looks bad on all of us. And when people, when our community's not calling that out and not saying that this is
But
wrong,
how many? I'm just
No,
to
I
your
get
point.
it.
How many cases has that occurred?
it happens. It happens a lot. We see it's happening all the time.
No, I
There-
have
there
to
are-
actually see.
there are-
I have to
There are
actually see
Twitter
data.
accounts. I mean, there's Twitter accounts with millions of followers that show this stuff multiple times
Okay,
a day.
now I know what you're talking about.
And so we're showing that these types of things do actually cause harm to trans people. So if you're looking at it at a trans lens and to say, what are we doing? We need to combat that stuff and come together to combat that
It does
stuff.
not encompass the entire trans experience.
No,
And
you're-
If it was a white man doing something bad to a black man, you would take it in consideration. If you want to take that in consideration, you have to take everything in consideration.
So being a non-binary person that sometimes has the choice to either go into a men's restroom looking like this, you can look at me looking like this.
It's just interesting that I thought this was a trans debate.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what I
don't
thought.
even.
Non-binary
That's what I
people,
thought.
non-binary
I
people
will
fall
fall
under the
under
trans
trans
I will
experience.
say that.
No, they don't.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe you could educate yourself a little bit
I
on
think
that,
I
and
could
maybe
educate
then you would
you.
figure
I
out,
think I could educate you,
what
right?
the reality is.
I'm
and what
sure
trans
there's-
Wait. If I did that officially, by their own logic, I am destroying trans people. So how can somebody that isn't trans telling a trans person how they have to think?
A non-binary Jubilee episode.
Wow, it's
Well, because it's not a debate about who is really trans and who is not.
It can be.
We're talking about restrooms. As a trans non-binary person, when I go into a place that only has men's and women's restrooms, and I'm dressed like this, my choice to go into the men's restroom at that point puts me in danger.
6 years ago when I've transitioned almost 8 years ago, but 6 years ago it was never an issue for me to use the women's room. Girls would literally drag me in there with them and say, "Girl, you need to be in our bathroom." And I was like, I felt uncomfortable back then. I don't pass. I know I don't pass, so that's a me problem. And I'm not going to turn my fear of being attacked in the men's room into a woman's problem. It's still a me problem, so I need to work on myself. And it sucks. Does it suck? Yes, it sucks. I don't pass. I know I don't pass.
Yeah.
But I still respect women enough, and some trans people aren't capable of handling themselves.
Yeah, some people can just take the L and proceed forward. But some people see taking an L is something that nobody has to go through. And I can understand that. I don't think we need to change the whole social structure so L's don't exist. I just think you're going too far. Because then somebody has more rights to have an L. And usually it's cis.
Women have spoke out. They've come out and said, we're not comfortable. There's too many self-ID'd people out there just taking advantage. And I choose to use the men's room to protect them.
layer that it's not even being discussed in any mainstream, that this is just completely wiped out, and that you're standing up for women, but you're not standing up for women children. You're not standing up for biological females that are children. You're only standing up for what really affects you. And it's kind of sad that the idea that passability is you need to work on your transition. A lot of folks, especially in our community, have no access to finances, resources, jobs, to even get their foot in the door, to get access to hormones. So you're putting all of these barriers just for them to be able to go to the restroom, which is a natural thing that we all have to do. So what do I need to do? Piss outside? Because that's how I was treated my entire childhood.
We all actually agree. It's men that are the problem. It's not trans women, real trans women. However, the problem is our community has really eroded any barriers to actually being trans, in the sense of your average cross-dresser can identify as a trans woman.
But then it's not a trans woman.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. I feel that way as well. I agree with you wholeheartedly. However, with the state of the political correctness within the trans community, you can't really say that. Like that person
Is this person
and
saying
their
they're
self-ID.
No,
They say that.
When I meet racist people that are surrounded by unique black people, I don't mind if they don't trust me in the beginning, because I know the moment they look at me in a weird way and I react in a specific way, immediately they're like, okay, you're kind of chill, right? And they need that. And I accept that. I don't care if they're a little afraid, because I know certain people messed it up for me. And when I win their heart, then they're going to be like, you know what? I met a good person. Maybe I'm the idiot.
I support the transgender military ban.
It's always the
I
conservative.
think that oftentimes when you talk about trans people in the military, people forget that most places, if we're talking about feet on the ground and really going into war zones, are really dangerous for trans people.
It's okay. The thing about it is, I think that there is a lot of nuance in this. I actually have friends that are currently serving in the military. I think there was a lot of misrepresentation of what the trans ban actually did. You know, you have soldiers, if you have surgeries, they go on profile, which means they can't actually do their job. They can't do PT. If you have bottom surgery, it takes a year. And so as a leader, that person's filling a position of a job of somebody that should be doing it. I don't mind somebody who is actually on hormones going there, because there's a lot of people, I mean, people take PTSD medications overseas. They actually take 6 months of medication with them. So a full-out ban I don't necessarily support, because I think that everybody in the military, as long as you can do your job, you can go in there and nobody really cares.
I think it's very discriminatory to keep trans people out of the military. We pay our bills here, we pay our taxes here, we are Americans, we deserve to serve this country as well. However, you all did raise some great points about the concern and safety of trans people. And I do agree that something does need to be done about that to protect us. Who's protecting us in the military?
I mean, if you're even diagnosed with like mild social anxiety, you're not eligible to enter the military. If you have like a crooked left, pinky toe, you're not eligible. So discriminatory, I mean, that word sounds pretty, in today's climate, very much like, oh no, discrimination, but it's not always bad. Sometimes it's for the safety, and it's like, when it comes to the military.
I don't understand how people don't see that you're going to work as a team. I want you to be in top conditions.
Well, I just want to interject your point about suicide. So as somebody who has worked in community service with community members directly, a lot of their suicide issues actually revolve around access to finances. And the military is one of the highest employers of transgender people. So we actually see the suicide rate drop. And for me personally,
but it's one of the highest employers of anybody.
But if you're suicidal and you go into a job that has a high likelihood of PTSD, causing PTSD and all these other issues, then it becomes a big issue, because then you already have one mental illness, and then you're compounding it with more.
Hold on. You guys have all forgotten the fact of what is the flip side for these transgender individuals that are signing up for the military and they're taken out, and that was their life plan. Where are they supposed to work, and where is their employment supposed to be?
No,
because
I
the
agree,
mental
but
illness that happens
I agree, it's
through
horrible.
homelessness and the lack of resources
agree,
that
it's
come,
horrible.
they don't have access to a job that could offer them
Take your
support
job.
and research and access to medication.
You want to tell people that are trans, go to the military. That will subsidize your transition.
People, I really want to see what you've done for those organizations, because I don't see any of y'all on the front line.
I'm on
The front line, like
fighting
what are
against
you
the-
talking about?
I'm
I've
on the front
dedicated,
line.
hold on. I've dedicated my entire life in my own way, and you can just.
I think she was the first trans person on YouTube. So the fact that somebody started this whole thing to motivate many people to just take it in consideration, now she's speaking out and now you're going against her, I will really look a little flip side at the person.
This is disappointing, actually.
This is very
It's disappointing that you would disrespect all of the people that are in community service and all of these social workers that actually do
Correct.
help trans people.
And it's really disappointing that you guys are
Okay.
disrespecting what the fuck I do, right?
When you say something about what is grassroots, that's the problem that I feel that some
Well, you're
trans
using a
influencers are
metaphor for
disconnected.
something that's
That is not a
professional.
They're gonna
metaphor.
speak in
That is
platitudes
that
the
is
whole
a
time. That's
tangible
what they're gonna do.
resource organization. Because if you, this is where y'all's privilege come in. Because if y'all don't,
Okay,
use
now because you're
privilege-
black. Really? Come on, man. I don't like victim mentality, man. Come on, man. I'm more progressive than you, so I should be able to talk more.
Got kicked out of the military. They didn't kick a single person out of the military who came forward and had gender dysphoria. 2, it was actually easy. It's more open to serve under the ban than it was under Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Yeah.
Okay? So you could actually be a trans person and present however you wanted off duty. You could go to a ball in a dress and nobody cared and they couldn't kick you out. In serving in the military, it's not a right. They can disqualify you for any reason, physical, anything. People get kicked out all the time because they can't pass PT tests.
Right.
And overseas, yeah, you don't necessarily have access to refrigerators for your testosterone or any of that other stuff. So if you're taking injections, it's a lot
I'm
different.
supposed to refrigerate it?
Okay, you see?
Take
And that's gonna
testosterone.
melt in the Middle Eastern sun, believe that. That estradiol is gonna be
Female
blue
hormones
goo.
are not always refrigerated. Let's just make that clear.
Well, my concern would be that, like, who's joining the military not to serve in the country, but only to get the cheaper drugs?
Thank you.
I just really hope that the people at the top that you're referring to aren't transphobic, because let's be clear of the isms that are in the military.
Man, we live
that
in
a lot of us
America.
face.
People are allowed
Excuse me,
to
I'm
be.
speaking. Do not
Okay, speak.
interrupt a black trans woman when she's speaking.
You've
Let's be
interrupted
very
me
clear.
hella
When it comes
times.
to when
Hella
it comes
times.
to isms.
Did the interrupter just
Again,
say
if you
use
are
her
black,
skin tone
if
to
you
say you
are
couldn't
black,
interrupt her?
if you are black and
That's
trans
amazing.
and you want to go in,
The skin tone has privilege.
and if we can't wake that up, then we're really being complicit.
They don't look at your race.
I don't think your
But you-
skin tone makes any difference.
Well,
As somebody,
yes, it does. Well,
as
I'm
somebody,
sorry.
no, as somebody who's
But it
serving in the
doesn't.
military,
For you to
as
tell a
somebody
black
who- no,
person
as-
that is so
as somebody who's
problematic.
serving,
For you
So
to
why
tell
do you
a
have
person
to
of
put
color
black in
here,
front of it?
because I am, this is my experience and this is my reality. First of all,
It has nothing
that
to
is
do
so
with your transness,
disrespectful
though.
to...
The rules are you cannot speak when somebody else is speaking,
Fair.
okay?
Yeah, they're talking to you.
This is a debate that we have as civilians that the military doesn't have, okay? Just plain and simple. If you can do your job, nobody cares who you are,
Yeah.
what you do, what your
That's it.
extracurricular activities outside of the military are. All they care is that they can count on the person to the left and right of them.
It's okay for minors to get top surgery.
You guys waited on that?
That's pretty vile.
I feel like the vibe is like, like as someone who had top surgery and went on hormones, like it's a very emotionally intense experience.
But to again negate people the ability to walk through a door that you have walked through, I'm going to say this again, and then close it behind you, is a little bit of a slap in the face for anybody who's seeking transition.
When I work on bills across the country that do ban this for minors, there's a couple things I point out. I point out that I don't think a 16-year-old female who wants breast implants should be able to get that either. When we look at what we allow minors to do, like surgeries and stuff like that, they're not life-saving. They're not, if you don't get it, you're not going to die. It's not like having appendicitis and having to get your appendix removed or anything like that. It's elective.
Even
They're
among
doing that,
adults, we all
but-
do different things in our
but-
transition. Some of us
correct.
want bottoms, some of us don't, some of us want tops, some of us don't.
I
So
understand,
you
but-
need a lot of time as an adult to figure out what you want to do.
But see, the thing is, though, some adults don't even understand what they want to do.
Exactly,
So, that's the kind
so
of the
how can a
thing.
child?
But
But
see,
I wanna-
children, that's
So the idea that she is saying like, well, hey, if adults don't know, kids can do it, bruh, that's freaking dangerous.
Touch
wait a
on
minute,
one
let's
thing
not,
you
a
said.
different
let's
fucking
not
planet.
underestimate the power of these kids today, okay? They are very much more educated because they have much more resources and access than we did
Wow.
coming up. So let's be
So
very
they're
clear about
advanced.
that.
And where are you going with this?
So in the UK, it was the, I can't remember what it was. It's the reason why they're shutting down the Tavistock Clinic in the UK,
Yeah.
UK though, is because they found that when you start a child on hormone, or on puberty blockers, then hormones, it leads to, it's basically a foregone conclusion that they're going to end up having surgery. It puts them on a
Yeah.
path to, it's a sunk cost fallacy.
Actually, it actually blurs your the decision-making capabilities.
Yo, the obsession with the conservatives about other people's kids. If it is your child, it is your choice what you do with your kid.
To your point about the reason why I'm against it is because, like you said, the children need to go through the proper steps, the parents, the doctors, but in the state of California, if you, as a parent, tell your minor, no, you're not getting this, I'm not affirming your gender, I'm taking your kids away, and California is going to raise your kids for you. So
Canada
how's
too.
that?
Canada too.
That's not right.
Non-binary should not be considered under the trans umbrella.
Let's go, girl.
I think it makes about as much sense as saying that bisexual is under the straight umbrella.
Here's the thing about a lot of
That's true.
the people who identify as non-binary, so to speak. When they do so, they typically don't medically transition.
Right.
And when you do so, that at that point, it's a costume.
Yeah.
Well,
Like-
it's gender nonconformity, right? And so we, as,
Because they
as
can
Blair's
take
saying-
this off. I can't take this off.
Yeah, as Blair's saying, we look
That's a
at
good
gender
point.
nonconformity.
We could all sit here and agree that like non-binary people are like not a part of the trans community or whatever, which is not my opinion. But we could like, that doesn't like change anything. Like there's a whole, we have a
It does change a lot because instead of talking about trans, we're talking about non-binary.
And I believe that non-binary people are a part of the community because I have so many shared experiences with so many non-binary people I know. We have very similar experiences in growing up with dysphoria, with transition, with anything, and nobody has to do anything. Nobody has to transition in a way they don't want to. Like, let's be a happy family. My God, let's all just be happy. That's my vibe.
Or fight the fight together.
Yeah, like,
because
let's do it.
honestly,
Like,
We have
unite.
separate fights though. That's the thing.
No, we
I don't
don't.
know if it
We're
is.
weakening our borders by creating this divide within our own community. This is so silly. When it first started really coming out, I did not agree with it. I was like, what is this? This is stupid. How can you be a them? Blah, 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 blah.
You were
And I did the
correct.
whole thing, the grammatically... You're interrupting. You were correct, but
I'm agreeing.
they asked you not to comment,
yeah, yeah.
and you're commenting. So if you could stop, that would be great. Thank
whatever.
you.
I don't want to say the word lie, but I guess that's what it is about what I've said here, right? I never said you don't exist. The same way that he said he can't take that off, you can, right? It's different. At the very least, it's different. And when we have a community that there are so many categories, demi-girl, demi-boy, astrosexual, all this shit, but y'all can't fathom that maybe that would be a different category than what I am when we have such different, as you keep saying, and everyone keeps saying, experiences? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
A bisexual is different than a gay man.
I just see a very feminine man.
I just actually want to ask you a question. What is your dysphoria, though? Because gender dysphoria, or sex dysphoria, as I would rather call it, is an uncomfortability between my secondary sex characteristics. Not just what I wear on a daily basis, because masculinity and femininity doesn't have anything to do with being trans.
That's a point.
But that's not true.
What?
You can have dysphoria without having to be dysphoric about your sex parts.
But what is your
you can have
dysphoria?
dysphoria
What is
about
your
anything.
dysphoria?
Straight cis women have dysphoria about their breasts all the time. They get breast augmentation.
dysphoria.
That doesn't mean that I'm not dysphoric about certain things. And you don't know my life. You're not in my life.
Well, that's why I
daily.
asked you a question.
You don't know.
But you didn't answer the question.
I cannot believe that I grew up as, this 5-year-old little kid experiencing just crippling gender dysphoria, like horrible thoughts, struggled so much my entire life to be sitting in this room and you're explaining to her what dysphoria is.
I have my experience. It
It's
doesn't mean that I
amazing.
didn't have crippling.
You got a different
It doesn't
experience.
mean
You
that
got a
I
different
myself-
we all have a different, we all have a
We all have
different
different
Which
experiences.
makes us different.
I know, but we're all both not a
It's okay,
Different
y'all.
things. That's it. It's that simple.
We don't.
It feels like somebody that always lived in a Western country is trying to explain to me how a third world country thinks. So they're still talking about something that isn't really trans, but it's related to dysphoria that they can't explain.
Doctors are manipulating trans medical care.
It's a pipeline.
I think there's 3 types of doctors out there. I think there are the ones who absolutely think that they're doing this for the right reasons. I think that there are the ones who are absolutely doing it for money, like we saw at Vanderbilt. The people at Vanderbilt literally said this is a huge moneymaker, because what we're seeing, not just in the trans community, we're seeing in society, SSRIs being pushed on patients. Mental health doctors are pushing so many different drugs without getting to the root issues.
See, I have an interesting perspective on this. I've been out for 11 years this year. I've been on testosterone since I was 15 years old. And even looking into it, I waltzed my little ass up into that doctor's office and I left on testosterone. He gave me my first shot in the doctor's office that day. I was 15 years old. What if I had been wrong?
And many times within a few visits or like this, they already put you on testosterone. And as they said before, most people that go on testosterone or puberty blockers or whatever, they will end up doing something to their body.
Their patients, they're manipulating, they say if you don't do this, you're going to kill yourself and all this stuff. So I would actually rather a doctor say, I have no idea what this is going to do to you, but it's your body, your choice. You can do what you want.
Yeah.
I was never informed of, when I started my hormone journey, and now it seems, like common sense, but I was, 20, so it's like, even 20-year-olds can have oversights. No one told me I had to freeze my sperm.
That's crazy.
So
Remember you
I'm
talked
years
about that.
into estrogen. I reached the point of adulthood where you maybe meet a partner where that might be something you want to do. And I learned that I can't. And it's simply because that doctor didn't care to tell me. And why? Who knows? Maybe it was because of money. It was easier for him or better for him to get me in and out and get that money rather than maybe a couple more appointments where I'm having to figure out, how to freeze my sperm in the meantime.
This is
But
messed up.
a lot of these doctors are also activists.
They also
they're-
don't tell trans men that they're going to go through menopause.
Right.
What?
There's a lot of issues with trans men. Buck Angel talks about that.
He
a
almost
lot of
died.
issues.
Like,
Yeah,
he's
he
a
almost
friend
died.
of mine. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now, unfortunately, because trans people have not got access to medical transition as long, and especially in the transmasculine community, there's a lot of research that has not been done. So to a degree, yes, we are guinea pigs in the shot in the dark. But just like in the 80s when AZT was being discovered, or 90s when it's being discovered, those folks had to go through that process. And I was given informed consent and understood that when I signed that.
We just don't know because the studies aren't there, like you said. What generally happens is there's no follow-up. The longest study that's been done is 5 years out. The average detransition happens between 4 and 10 years. So we're not capturing all of that. Plus, if you haven't had your primary sex organs removed, you literally just stop taking hormones, and then you never go see your doctor again. And so they never follow up, and you just fall off the rolls. So the stats on detransition is completely false.
So I don't think that doctors are manipulating trans care. I think they're still learning about trans care. And to your point, there is not a lot of research because the research is still new and fresh. Detransitioning is a thing, but truth be told, detransitioning is actually rare when it comes to not just wanting to be trans anymore.
But the idea that they're saying is you can say something is rare when you're not doing follow-up with people that don't want to take these things anymore, right? What defines a detransitioner? It's not even clear. Is it somebody that stops? Is somebody that regrets? Is somebody that snippety snip themselves? What is it?
We don't push forward with transitioning children until we have the research. We do the research. And this is actually what GenSpec pushes as well. GenSpec organization, they push to get more research on it. So we absolutely know what this does. Because even the WPATH guidance, the latest guidance from WPATH, everything that it says even about puberty blockers, it cites a study, and then it says we don't know.
To your point about gaining research, how do you expect the medical community to gain access to research if we're just preventing these folks to actually go through any of the processes to learn the scientific method of what is happening?
Yeah, so it's the same way as we have with any research. You have a very select, very heavy gatekeeping crew that you're allowed to, create these studies around. And you need a good checklist to be like, these people show all the actual signs of gender dysphoria. They are having very strong distress, and in every state that's passed bans on access for minors also has provisions except for in the most extreme cases to conduct studies on.
Gender affirming transition is suicide prevention.
Even the gender affirming care that I did receive later in my life when I went on hormones when I was 16 and I got top surgery at 17, that completely changed my life in the most dramatic way.
I think too often we hear, that if we don't affirm our child's, gender identity that's different than their sex, then they're going to commit suicide. We hear this all the time, especially from the detransition community whose parents were told this and it was manipulative. We hear politicians say this all the time when they're trying to, stop bills or pass bills. The problem with that is that's the same line that abusers use. So when you're in a relationship, if you're going to leave somebody and they say,
I never thought that, wow.
If you leave me, I'll kill myself, then that is an abusive situation. And it's not, so that's the premise we start with. Transition, we're all here, we know. Transition is not an easy process. It takes a heavy mental toll. And so I really think that if you're already suicidal, you have to get that in check. You have to be in a healthy place before you can even think about going through the medicalization of trans.
Yeah, but the thing is, most people won't even dare to challenge it in many states because they can lose their license.
You can socially transition. I think that's absolutely fine. But I think that, before you even think about medically transitioning, then I think you have to have your head right before that. And hormones will make you feel kind of crazy anyways.
Yep,
So I
don't
think
you?
that's
They're saying, trans your kid or your kid's gonna die.
Yeah.
And they say it in front of the child. And they set up this false dichotomy as if those are the only two options moving forward.
If I was going to school and my kids are getting bad notes and the teacher tells me we need to help this kid get good grades because if not, he will commit. If you say that in front of my child, I will get my child immediately out of that school. Because I would be like, yo, you didn't have to install that in their brain.
Here to tell any child feeling any type of way, those are not your only two options. In fact, there is a vast array of options in between and around suicide and transition. People don't know that a long observed symptom of sexual abuse is wanting to be the other gender to cope with it. I just think it's a false dichotomy that it's either death or transition. But with that said, I agree with you. I appreciate everything that transition's done for me, but it's too much of a roll of the dice, and I think it's unhealthy telling people, do it or you're gonna die, especially a child.
And let's also be clear that these researchers are also collaborating with these organizations because they are the ones that have the most outreach to the community that they need.
That is why Sweden, the one that is more advanced in all this stuff, they're kind of stopping it or putting the gatekeeping back. A lot of European countries are, Denmark, I believe also, and Norway, they're gatekeeping. UK, when they were doing this during COVID, they started to gatekeep closing a lot of these stuff.
Organizations, there was a little number that the life expectancy of a trans woman was 35. That was rescinded a couple years ago after like over a decade of that being like just factually, shared. And I always thought that my life was statistically going to end at 35. So, but those numbers were based on, by those organizations, prostitute deaths. So it's not.
So I am an activist, and so a lot of what you're talking about really was focused more on Black trans women because Black trans women do not live past the age of 35 because oftentimes it is our group within the trans community that is often murdered, we're often harassed, we're often discriminated.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You are selling yourself as that prostitute. I know people that are not even trans that don't reach 40 because of the same reason. Just remove all the people that have been selling themselves on the street. Show me the clear statistic what is the average age, and that is supposed to be the average age. So ladies and gentlemen, we're reaching the end. Echo chambers have been bouncing together, whatever you want to call it. I would stick to my opinion. I can understand, be fluid and everything, but when we're talking about kids, as long as their life is not going to end, kids need to have time to make their own decision. And when you tell people to do such a thing, I think you need to tell them, I don't know what this is going to do to your body. These are the things and this might happen. And I'm just surprised that Blair White did not even know that now suddenly, hey, I can't have any babies anymore. That's horrible. And the fact that even an adult can be confused, what about a kid? Don't see, at least for my choice, I think this is just a pipeline to make money, but we will see in the future, right? But let me know if you guys like it like this. Like, share, hit the bell notification, the usual. Subscribe if you like the content. And let me know because, hey, if you like longer content, you gotta show me why, okay?